Okay, this is homework. So you'll go back and finish this. But just share with me an insight or two that you gained from this experience. I know this is not the first that you have looked at this, but what does this teach us? What does this help us do? Any thoughts? Yes, please.
It helps to show me what's important that I'm doing right now. Like ultimately, the end result that I'm figuring out is not matter.
Well, that is such a great comment. Thank you for that. What you're saying is that the choices we make now matter. But sometimes we lose, I'll speak autobiographically, sometimes I lose perspective of that, right? And with all the things that are hitting us from all kinds of different angles, and you all, I'm sure, find yourself at certain points in time feeling so busy. Do you ever feel that way? Well, here's the lucky thing. It only gets busier, okay? And as life goes on, it becomes more and more complex, and there's all kinds of things that have to be done, and often what gets lost is that which really is the most important. And you know the analogy of climbing the ladder of success, and you climb rung after rung after rung and put in all the blood and sweat and tears that goes into doing that. And finally, at the end of your life, you get to the top of the ladder only to realize that the ladder is leaning against the wrong wall. And you had never taken the time to say, when all is said and done, that's where I want to be. I want to be doing this. I want to be this type of person. I want to have made this contribution. Because if you can identify that now, it informs and gives great direction to the choices and decisions you make today. Any other comments on that? Thank you for that. I love this little poem, cowboy poetry. It's my favorite cowboy poem. This is called Reincarnation by Wallace McCrae. I'll give you my best Central Utah voice. I'm not very good at accents. What does reincarnation mean? A cowpoke asked his friend. His pal replied, it happens when your life has reached its end. They comb your hair and wash your neck and clean your fingernails and lay you in a padded box away from life's travails. The box in you goes in a hole that's been dug into the ground. Reincarnation starts when you're planted neath a mound. Them clots melt down just like your box and you who is inside, and then you're just beginning on your transformation ride. In a while the grass will grow upon your rendered mound, till someday on your moldered grave a lonely flower is found. And say a hoss should wander by and graze upon this flower that once was you, but now has become your vegetative power. The posy yet the hoss done ate, up with his other feed, makes bone and fat and muscle essential to the steed. But some is left that he can't use, and so it passes through, and finally lays upon the ground this thing that once was you. Then say by chance I wanders by and sees this upon the ground, and I ponders and I wonders at this object that I found. I think of reincarnation, of life and death and such, and come away concluding, Slim, you ain't changed all that much. Obviously that's not what we want to do. Paradigm 1, importance, not urgency. Paradigm 2, I choose my values and create my future based on them. Paradigm 3, I am responsible. So what you've seen we've done here is taken the private victory and gone backwards. The idea being that I need to put what matters most in my life first. I need to, as you said back there, to put first things first. But before I can put first things first, I really need to know what those first things are. I really need to know what is most important. That really is the essence of personal leadership. But before I can do that, I need to have this fundamental paradigm shift that I am responsible, that it is me who makes decisions for my life. You've seen this model. Okay. You're familiar with the circle of influence, the circle of concern, right? The proactive person focuses where? The reactive person focuses where? What happens when we put our time and attention and energy on circle of concern? Stress? What else? Our circle of influence gets smaller and smaller and smaller, and you start to feel like the victim, and all these things are happening to me, and he makes me so mad, and she makes me so angry, and we feel like we empower other people to lead and manage our lives, right? The proactive person focuses on the circle of influence, and what happens then? When we bring a concerted and prolonged, continued focus on our circle of influence, it gets bigger, doesn't it? It's amazing. And over a very short period of time, you find yourself as a leader doing things that just in the recent past you would have never have thought even possible. How many of you know who Bob Geldof is? Bob Geldof was a member of the Irish punk rock group, the Boomtown Rats. I know you all love the Boomtown Rats, right? You heard of the Boomtown Rats? Well, they were famous and kind of they had their 15 minutes of fame back in the early to mid 80s, and then they're kind of tapering off. But one day Bob was he was British, and he was watching TV, sitting on his couch in his flat in Great Britain, watching a news documentary with a friend. And the documentary was about the famine that was occurring in Ethiopia. You guys weren't born yet, but Dr. Jackson remembered the famine that occurred in Ethiopia in the 80s, and it was absolutely devastating. So he watched on this program as they were talking about the effects of this and the long-term impact and the way it was impacting individual lives, and then he started to show the children. And then it really started to hit home to him. They showed as they would take people who had relative health, and they bring these people and they would examine them, and if they were relatively healthy, they send off to one area, and then they examine the next person. If they just didn't have enough to make it, they'd send them off to another area. And then they would give what limited resources they had to these people over here, who they thought had the best chance of survival, and they just let these die because they couldn't do anything else. And he sat there and he thought, how can we do this? We have more resources than we ever need. How can we let this happen? I can't just sit here and watch this. We've got to do something. And he turned to his friend, we've got to do something. And his friend said, you're right. What are you going to do, Bob? Solve world hunger? And that was my reaction. I think if I'm put in that situation, I'm appalled. And 5 minutes later, I'm flipping channels, looking to see the score of the ball game. It just sort of passes out of my consciousness. But Bob couldn't let it go. He decided that he was going to do something. So he went through with his band and got together and said, okay, here's what I saw. We've got to do something. Are you in? They all jumped on board. Went to a bunch of theater owners and said, if you'll donate your facilities, we'll donate our talents, such as they are. We'll create all these proceeds and we'll send all of them to support the people in Ethiopia. Can you do that? And the theater owners said, yeah, we can do that. So he started to do it and did it here, and it was successful, and did it here, just successful. And pretty soon he started to do it more and more across all of the United Kingdom. And one day he gets a call. Bob, yes, this is Phil Collins. I understand you're doing this thing for the people in Ethiopia. Can I be part of that? Absolutely. So they start getting more people involved. It gets another call. Bob, this is Elton John. I want to be part of what you're doing. Can I do this with you? Yes. Another day gets a call. Bob, this is Michael Jackson. Excuse me. So I understand you're doing this thing for people in Ethiopia. Can I be involved? And what started as one man's efforts, okay, eventually evolved into what was known as Band-Aid in Europe and Live Aid in the United States, and raised millions and millions of dollars for the people in Ethiopia, and has served as a model for a number of other things that they've done since.